All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Connecting in the Clouds. This was supposed to be last week's. We had to move it forward, and I'm sure we'll get into Christos's fun. It sounded like he had some travel challenges that created a need to reschedule. I'm here as usual with Shannon and Amy. So welcome, and we're here today with Christos. Christos, why don't you give a quick introduction of who you are for our viewers and those that might not know you?
Well, nice to be back. Thanks for having me. First time on this show, so thanks for inviting me. I work at AWS. I'm a technical keynote lead, which doesn't really say much other than keynote and lead. And what I really do these days is helping our executives work on their keynotes and the messaging that we want to give out there. So having a pulse on what the industry is doing out there, still being technical enough to be able to explain things, and then working with executives, which is always fun, to write stuff, which is great.
Yeah, but Christos and I were on the same team at one point. He also is he's also a Microsoftie deep down somewhere now.
Ex-Microsoft.
It's buried a little bit, right?
Still Microsoft running through my veins.
Love
that. The alumni, yeah.
Do they say like once
Microsoft? See, working for an integrator, and we do a lot. We do a lot with AWS. Mm-hmm. So I generally will refer to AWS as my mistress, being a Microsoft MVP. So
yeah, right. Well, and then now that I'm in a systems integrator, same thing. I was talking about AWS accounts, and I kept saying subscriptions, and I'm like, it is going to be so hard to switch this up. I am so sorry. I mean accounts. I don't mean subscriptions, and I'm really sorry. And so I always apologize. I say I was a former Microsoftie, and it's hard to like change, but it's been interesting going down this multi-cloud path. Christos, did you have a lot of hangups or problems, or did you find that like the lift into AWS was a little bit easier because you were so familiar with Azure?
I would say the principles of cloud apply to all three cloud providers. So it's like, more or less similar services, just different names.
Right.
Now, but my biggest fear obviously is being in a room full of executives and blurting out their own service name or their own cloud name.
Do you prep before those meetings?
I have to have like a pre-process, like think before you talk kind of thing, especially in the early days. Like, you don't want to be talking about their own cloud. But at the same time, when we talk to customers or when we try to message stuff, it's more or less the same principle, right?
You're right.
Our customers to build their solutions in the most cost-efficient, resilient, and effective way. And these days, many of these customers will be multi-cloud anyway because they need to be as resilient as possible. They need to be able to serve customers everywhere they are, and that's the truth. So, yeah.
Very cool. You just
The
can't call it
transition has
East
been-
US, right? I've worked with people that are like East US. Wait, no, it's
No.
whatever the AWS version of. So.
I think I was talking to somebody within my own company. I was talking to a group of people in my company that are aspiring to be Microsoft MVPs, around becoming an MVP.
Sure.
And was talking about like activities, and I said reinvent while I was talking. I'm like, actually, no, that wouldn't help.
Yeah.
Reinvent
Well, and I
yourself.
think
Wait.
I finally realized that AWS Heroes, that's the MVP equivalent in AWS. I just figured that out this week. I probably should have figured it out before, but now that it's kind of in my view, I'm like, oh, that's what okay. Makes sense now.
And they
have
have different
friends.
tiers. They have the community builder, which I'm an AWS community builder, which is a self-nomination process for that. So which is kind of cool. When I went to Reinforce, they had a community event that was the builders and the heroes. So I met a couple of AWS heroes. So that was pretty nice as well. They've got a little bit more of a different tiering system than Microsoft does. They kind of have the MVP, and then they've got the regional directors, which is a higher tier of that. But they kind of have that that starter program of the community builders within AWS, which allowed me to get involved in creating content and everything for AWS like I do for Microsoft. And maybe someday I'll be considered an AWS hero. Who knows?
They're very selective. I have to say that with MVPs, we had a lot more MVPs at Microsoft, whereas at AWS, to become a hero, the criteria are a lot more stringent, and they have less heroes.
Yeah,
I think that also elevates the value of that, right? So
Yeah.
to be selected as a hero,
Definitely.
you have to have done a lot of work.
yeah. So in theory, I'm going to reInvent. So got to figure out some logistics. So
Nice.
I don't know, Dwayne. I don't know if you're going. Are you going? Do you know yet?
I don't know. Nobody has
Okay.
told me whether I'm going
Yeah,
or
so
not.
it's always the
We're
logistics
going
when
to
you're
those
at the
travel
partner.
those last half of the year travel embargoes.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that. There's some there's some organizational changes going on where we sold our data set. We're in the process. We had announced last week. It's announced on social media and everything, so it's public knowledge that we've got a investor that's going to buy our Atos name and our data center business, and we're going to go full on as and the IPO that was Atos is going to be inherited by Eviden, and we're going to be purely cloud business. Essentially, we're going to really truly sink our teeth 100% into being a cloud native company with our security and big data and all of that as well built into that.
So Christos, in theory, I'll be there. I'll have to find you and give you a hard time. So you were telling me that, even though you're writing the keynotes, if you were delivering the keynotes, there'd have to be some weird event that happened, like food poisoning. Somebody got run over by a bus. You know what I mean?
A
Like
a major catastrophe. Yeah, there's a major catastrophe for us to be on stage, and it's very uncommon because we have so many redundancies in place. Like every other cloud, like every other cloud solution, you have to have redundancies. So we don't really write the keynotes. We work on the keynotes with executives. We provide input, and we're
coaching?
Yes, to an extent. We also have speech coaches, but we are responsible for the delivery of the keynote. That includes, any demos that might be in the keynote, any visuals that need to be in the keynote, working with the speakers on the script and helping them, find the real voice. And then, going through all these. So, any videos that we might have, we need to coordinate all these. We're pulling everything together in the keynote. And one of the things that we're also responsible for, which is a fantastic segue to what happened to me last week in Taiwan, is having redundancies. So we always have a primary speaker. Ideally, we want that speaker to be able to deliver everything, but we also have a backup speaker that is always on a standby. So in case something happens, then we need to get the backup speaker. Last year, it was the only case where we were in New York, one of our biggest summits, and unfortunately Werner got sick with COVID, and we only found out on the morning off. In fact, we found out 15 minutes before he got on stage, because he was there. He was backstage getting ready to get on stage, and then he said, I'm not feeling well. I don't think I'll be able to deliver the 90-minute keynote. And at that point, it was one of the few instances that we didn't have a backup speaker.
Oh, no.
So it was like Martin Beebe, who's also in my team, he was called upon to deliver the keynote. Which is great, going in front of 4,000 people to deliver a keynote. Luckily, we are closely intimate with the content, so we know exactly what happens when it happens and stuff like that. But it's still very daunting. And that was my first week in the job, so it was funny because in the morning we had done the rehearsals, and in the morning we're sitting at a cafe having breakfast, and Martin was like, how do you feel about your first week? You see, you saw the process, you saw how the cheese is made, and nothing can go wrong from now on. It's like, delivering the keynote and being done, and everything that could go wrong after that point went wrong.
Oh yeah, so, I was at that summit. That was like my first event that I had gone to, and unfortunately I was put on booth duty during the keynote, but I heard but I know there was also protesters that found their way in for that also.
New York is notorious about protests, and we had protests this year as well, which was like a couple of weeks ago. They like to interrupt, and it's weird because their messaging doesn't really align to what the keynote speaker is saying on stage. So they complain about very random things like the worker conditions in the
Amazon.
Amazon warehouse
and people
stuff.
forget.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It had nothing to do with AWS.
This is cloud. Yeah,
it is cloud. Yeah.
Amazon.
Do you have any issue with your EC2s that I can help you with? Anyway.
I can create a demo for it. Do you need any demos?
Right. They're confused. Wait, no.
Yeah. Wrong booth.
Right.
And then last week I was in Taiwan. So I wasn't planning on flying there, but the executive that was going to deliver that, they asked me to be in person. So like, okay, fine. So it was right after my triathlon race. So I came back from Maine. I was super tired, tried to check into my flight, and turns out that we were changing travel systems internally in the company, and they didn't issue my ticket. So I'm sitting there 8 o'clock at night, getting ready to go to bed because I was up since 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I'm finding out that my flight to Taiwan is not there. So, I go into panic mode. It's like, I need to think of a backup, find a flight that will take me to Taiwan on time. I reach out to my manager. I'm like, listen, I need to book a flight outside of our system. I need an exception. He goes, absolutely, go for it. I book it, and then I didn't realize that it was actually flying in 4 hours. So I haven't had any sleep.
Oh, no.
I had to get up, put my stuff into my luggage. I literally threw stuff. This was the first time I didn't tidy up. I was just like throwing stuff.
Pants.
You're like, I hope I have deodorant. I hope I have,
Hope it matches. I don't know.
I had everything already packed. So I unpacked and then packed everything because I was traveling for the race. And I went to the airport and I'm so tired. I get on the plane, fly out to Taiwan. I think I didn't sleep for like 28 hours.
Oh my
God.
God.
Went into my room, crashed. Now, we had to have a backup speaker as well because the original speaker pulled out on the Thursday before the keynote. They had some personal issues, and we put the backup plan into action. So the new speaker came in. We had to rewrite the keynote because every keynote speaker will have their own personal, voice and stories and ideas they want to bring on stage. So from Thursday to Sunday, I was working on the new messaging, the new keynote content and stuff. And then we get on Taiwan, we're getting ready, we do the rehearsals, we time everything. Everything is perfect. And then the night before, once we wrapped all the rehearsals, there was a typhoon warning and the government shut everything down for the next day. So when the keynote was supposed to happen, everything was canceled. So we didn't have a keynote.
Oh, man.
And, I went to Taiwan to technically do rehearsals and then come back. But this is what happens with this is the keynote life, right? So we had earthquakes last year in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had flooding. There's all sorts of things that can happen to us, but it's nice to know that we have a robust process there to deal with all these things. Yeah. And we ended up recording the keynote the night off, once we finished the rehearsals. So now we're having an online summit for Taiwan. So the Taiwanese people won't miss out on the experience, albeit it will be online. But they get the same content and the same messaging, which is great.
That's great. Yeah, I can't control typhoons.
No, you can't control the weather. You have to roll with the punches.
Sorry.
But yeah, it was definitely an adventure. Last week I was like, I don't want to do this again.
Right. Sleep deprived typhoon.
Typhoon cancellations.
Yeah. I think I found out about the contingency plan when I was trying to figure out where the Christos keynote was. And I was like, where's your keynote? You're like, oh no, if I actually deliver a keynote, it's bad news bears. Like there's some issue that happens, some massive issue. There's like multiple layers of contingency for these. And I'm like, so it was eye-opening because we all thought when you left Microsoft that we were going to see you on stage and we were like, where's Christos?
He's behind the curtain.
Yeah.
It's a very weird feeling, right? Because I went from being on stage and being in front of cameras and stuff to not being visible at all in this job. But at the same time, the impact of this job is so much bigger that, you can't put into words when you see the result, when you see the end, when you're sitting behind the stage, when the main speakers are on stage delivering stuff. You're like, I put this together and I know the flow and the timing works perfect and everything works great. At the end, you just high five and like, 6 months wrapped up in an hour. You can't replicate that. That's
awesome. Yeah, it's your baby. Just saw it.
It is literally your baby.
Yeah.
You also need to have very thick skin because there are a lot of stakeholders. We're talking about CEOs and CEOs of AWS and Amazon going on stage to deliver stuff. So we work at that level, and because of that visibility, you have a lot of different teams. You have PMs that want to talk about the product and want to have visibility. You have marketing managers that also want to, bring their message into the stage. Then you have different executives and different teams also trying to influence and help with the content. And that means they have to coordinate with a very large number of people and also conflicting requirements sometimes. So, yeah. The job is to make everyone happy and at the same time not feel any, like the feedback that we get is fairly brutal. Like, I don't like this and this crash. 3 weeks worth of effort, but that's how we build really awesome keynotes.
Yeah, it sounds like you're still drinking from a fire hose. It's just a different fire hose.
Oh yeah,
right. And then and so you figured out a way to kind of make it work. So I was just telling Dwayne right before you joined that this is the first time that I think I'm streaming with you where you're after you've moved, because you were still in the Redmond area when you quit Microsoft, and you're in the Boston area, right?
Correct. Yeah, it was like last year was very weird in terms of timing and getting everything done. So the plan was to, stop at Microsoft, and then we were looking for a house. We're looking for somewhere to move, and Seattle is prohibitively expensive. It was like stupid to even think about buying property there. So we also wanted to be closer to Europe. So Massachusetts ticked a lot of boxes for us. And we were in the process of looking for a house. And then, the AWS thing happened and the Microsoft thing happened and the house happened at the same time. So
it was literally like a couple of weeks. Your world was just flipped completely upside down.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
And then we had to get everything ready to move. And then we had to get everything sorted and live in Airbnbs, moving companies. Like, it's an insane amount of logistics that had to happen while also ramping up on a new job. That's I wouldn't recommend. Like, it's a 3 out of 10 for anyone.
Working through chaos.
Working through chaos. Yeah.
But you stuck your landing. You responded like a cat. You landed on your feet.
Yes.
And now don't you have a dog now too?
We do have a dog. He's somewhere around playing with the kids, but he's a proper character. He's a miniature schnauzer, and he's probably got what he lacks in size, he has in character. So.
Personality, yeah. Those little dogs do. They have all the personality.
Oh yeah, they got to make
They're
up
very
for the
clever,
size.
but that's also a downfall for them because they're so clever. They will tell you exactly what they need, when they need it, and how they need it. So.
Yeah, Amy and Nick have a small dog. You think Milo's what? He's a corgi mix?
Corgi, Chihuahua. Okay. He's cute. He just doesn't bark. Everyone's like, he'll bark a few times, maybe if the doorbell rings, but that's it. And he's chill. Everyone just loves him. They're like, oh my God, he's amazing. I'm like, I know. It's the best dog.
My dog feels like anybody that walks down the street is a risk.
Yeah.
Murder.
300 feet away, still a risk.
No,
ours is very social.
Very risk averse. Our dog.
There you go. Good for security.
She's like a 25-pound golden doodle. So
okay.
Kind of that mid-size.
Those can be crazy. We have a lot of those.
We had a cockapoo as our first dog when we first got married, and she was like 10, if she got to 10, 11 pounds, the vet said she would say she was overweight because she had because she was like 8 or 9 pounds, so she gained like 10% of her body weight if she gained a pound or two, right? So so he'd start getting concerned, we went with a little bigger dog because I had my youngest was a toddler at the time, and we knew if we got another small dog, it would be broken very quickly. And I see why now. Even more, he used to tackle her when she was a puppy and things like just go and just dive on her, and thankfully he decided to play football this year, so now he can do that efficiently for real reasons.
Yeah.
So how did Shannon end up with a cat over here? Because everyone has a dog.
So I was not home a lot in my 20s. I was playing the part of DJ Shan, also just being crazy, never home a lot. Went to a bunch of concerts. I was a very social person, but I wanted a pet, and so cats seemed to be more self-sufficient. I definitely have moments where I'm like, because my wife has 2 cats too. So my one cat passed away last fall. So we're down to 3. And we keep saying when we get to 2 or maybe 1, we'll get a dog ourselves. But I was just never home a lot. And I always felt bad getting a dog and then having to potentially have that dog sit around, in my apartment when I was living in the city for possibly up to 12 hours a day. And that's sort of rough, especially when they're young.
It's hard, yeah. Depending on the dog, they need attention. So
yeah. So I went with cats. They're more self-sufficient. They're characters in their own right, but they want their love the way they want it. Where dogs are just like, give me love. I don't care. Just give me all of the love.
I'll take it. Just give it to me anytime, any day. I'll take it. Cats are like, don't touch me.
Did you get a puppy, Christos? You got a puppy, didn't you?
We did get a puppy. We got it when he was 12 weeks old.
Okay.
So I think that's they have to spend some time at the kennel before they are released.
They do.
And then we got it just after Christmas. So that was a Christmas present to the family.
Nice.
Which I question about the timing and the decision. But
sleep deprivation.
Well, my wife did the heavy lifting, so she gets all the kudos. But our dog gets up very early in the morning, which is extremely annoying. So she's up at 5:30.
Oh no!
When she's up, everybody else has to get up.
Love me, feed me, pet me, walk.
Yeah.
He needs to go.
So it's like having a baby, really.
Yeah,
essentially, yeah.
So I was waiting for my daughters to grow up and not have any sleep issues, and now we have
the dog.
Because your daughter's, your youngest, isn't she 8 or 9 now?
She's 9 now, and
9, and then your oldest is what,
her
12 or
birthday
13?
is actually this Sunday, so we need to get ready for the big show. And then the other one is 12 and a half.
12 and a half. Okay, so you're no longer fun dad anymore. She's a preteen.
She's still okay.
Okay.
Okay. She hasn't turned yet. I think it will be overnight. Like one day she will wake up and like,
I hate my dad. He sucks.
If it's anything like my daughter, Christos, it'll be with your wife that she'll turn on. It won't be,
so maybe you'll be the safe space.
Well, I have a dog, so all the
the
female drama is happening somewhere else, and I'm sitting in the corner with the dog.
You can hide with the dog.
Just you and me, buddy.
We're outnumbered.
Amy, your daughter just turned 12, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She still likes me. She still cuddles me, and so hasn't.
You'll take it for as long as you can, and then it'll be verbal knife fights for a bit. That was the way it was with my mom, and now I look back at it and I wish I could go back. I could change that, but I think you have to kind of go through it too and realize that your parents weren't completely clueless. They
female dominance
some things.
Right.
Yeah.
My daughter just turned 20 last week. So
wow.
Ooh.
So and my oldest son turned 22 last week as well.
Go. So you don't have to worry about that.
And now I've got a teenage boy. So a little bit different than a teenage girl. Boys I think get more, the girls attack where the boys like just kind of get
ignore and they hide
about everything. They're just
does he call you bra? Does he do that? Yeah, that's a very big trend these days.
Bro.
Hey, bro.
Bra. Oh yeah, bra.
Mom.
Yeah.
I said to my kids, if they do that, then they will be homeless. Sorry. Once you start calling me bra, then you start paying the rent. That's it. Dude, if you're ready for that kind of commitment, then I will take it. But be aware that you have to pay rent.
I love it. Yeah, right.
I can be a cool dad.
That because
been
bra, dude. Yeah.
Bra, dude.
Kicked out. Crystal said so.
Yeah.
Crystal's law.
Right?
Yeah, my 13-year-old, he's calling my daughter dude a lot, and did call her bro, I think, last week, and she's like, bro, I'm a girl. Yeah.
It's kind of like such a thing right now.
What it is,
it's such a thing right now.
Yeah. Gender fluid, I think bro and dude is like, these days.
Yeah,
like you guys. Like you guys.
Yeah. It's weirdly inclusive. You wouldn't think so because of the way that we were raised, but it's like weirdly inclusive. I'm like, okay, I'm okay with it. It's just,
I'll be a bra.
It's not like, I'm just not used to it, right?
Yeah.
I got a ways before my son's that old, so
yeah.
You'll be surprised, son. You'll be surprised.
How fast? Oh, yeah. I know. He's we got him. So my son is no longer in a high chair because he's too tall, and he's in a booster seat, and he's figured out how to do the little clasps on the booster seat because because they still want to move around, and he doesn't have enough balance, nor is he tall enough to potentially catch himself if he falls. So he's been playing around. He's figured out how to like put the little clasps in. And I'm like, dude, you are a year and a half. You can slow down. It's going to be just fine.
So now he's going to insist on doing his own clasps. Like that's what happened to us.
Taking him off
in the car. Like, no, let me do it. And then you're in a hurry, and then they spend like a minute.
2 hours later.
Yeah, 2 hours later, you're like, okay, well, we missed our appointment.
I love the initiative, I love the effort, but not the right time.
Yeah, I do it. Like, please no.
Oh, but yeah, no. So we were just joking. We were like, I can't believe he's a year and a half. Like the amount of stuff that we've downsized, right? So my sister, she had her son last November, so we've just been giving her everything, and now she's getting to the point where he's starting to grow out of stuff because he's getting close to being a year, and now they're trying to figure out what to do. So we're trying to convince my parents to hold on to it because their house is big enough. They do have the space for it, but we're trying to convince them to hold on to it until my youngest sister decides to have kids because she's got a little bit before she's finding herself, having kids. They want to own a house, and I think they're in the process of saving for it, but. Yeah, we've been hot potatoing baby equipment for the last year and some change.
Well, I have a question for you, Shannon.
Sure.
Does Reese have his own computer and he's done his first cloud formation deployment yet?
No. But I will say he is so fascinated.
What are you waiting for?
I need to get him to write a Hello DJ World app, right? Should it be .NET?
Mini DJ equipment.
Yeah, right. .NET.
He's so fascinated by my office, and so I'm in the process of moving offices, which Christos, you remember my other office, and obviously Dwayne and Amy do too. But I'm moving down here, and the short story is I have old coaxial cable here, and I do have Comcast, unfortunately, but it was causing issues with my neighbors and their connectivity because the protection sheath was old. It's like coax from like the late 90s, and a lot, I guess, has changed. I learned a ton in the last couple of months here, but they reran cable in this room. I said, well, fine, then I'll just move everything down here. We were talking about moving me down here anyway, but I'll just move myself down a little bit sooner and hopefully be able to not have weird outages and cause weird outages for my neighbors. But it's the things you don't realize when you buy a house. You don't realize. So and the reason why we didn't spend the money to reroute coax for the house. Well, one, it's coax. I only need like one endpoint, really. And then two, it's zip tied all throughout my walls. And I'm like, I'm not sawing into my walls. Like who installed this? Like, that's like novice hour, like it's you never did that when you were racking and stacking gear. So
zip ties.
Yeah.
So Shannon and I have now a similar coax conversation about Comcast because I had a similar problem that found out that that they didn't bond my coax properly when they installed it, and plus it was old anyway. But they had to redo my Comcast because every time I went online, they actually put an attenuator on my line and didn't tell me about it. So
they did the same thing for me too.
Because I was taking 300 of my neighbors out every time I went online. Yeah. Every time my modem booted up.
Yeah, now that I've moved everything, I have to call them. I have to deal with customer service, which I got to find a good time to do it because it always puts me in a bad mood. I'm the one that's like, agent, get me to, representative.
Right. Human.
Because they need to take it off our line now because it is the newer coax. But yeah, I think I was telling you, Dwayne, they came out like 13 or 14 times in the last year and a half. Christos, remember I was having like some weird issues with my line when we were broadcasting and stuff, and like I was like, I hope there's no gremlins in the machine. Well, I finally was just like, look, I'm tired of you guys coming out here. What's going on? I know you're not charging me each time you come out, but what's going on? And finally, one of the engineers walked me through it, and so we reran the line in this room, so it's now better. But I just need to have them remove, what was that called again, Dwayne? It's this. I had the same thing on my line. Attenuator. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they put it. Well, they actually blocked they put one so strong it just blocked me completely, and then they walked away.
Like that fixes the problem.
With my internet now.
So what was your download upload?
In my backyard, in my box, they put it on. They found that the problem was in my house, so they blocked my house and then left. They didn't knock on the door and say, "Hey, we're trying to troubleshoot a problem in your house." They just left for the day at 1:30, right before I was going to do a webinar, I believe, as well. And it was like, it would have been helpful that you could have just knocked, because I had talked to the guy about what problems I was having and everything like 30 minutes before that. So the guy knew I was home, but just popped that off. So me being somebody that used to run structured cabling, just went into the box, saw this thing on there, took it off and put it back on, and it brought them back out the next day.
I was gonna say they're gonna show back up.
Dwayne, you want to drive to
neighbors
Chicago
down
and do that for me? You want to drive to Chicago and pull it off? Because it's going to save me this headache of trying to explain what's going on. Because you always get like the lower level support tier, and I get it, right? You need those people because the people that know what they're doing, they don't have the time nor the scale to help. So, but yeah, I have a very similar situation, and I just can't believe that one zip tied, and there's coax all over the house. Like if I wanted a TV in my bathrooms, I could have it. I'm like, this is so weird. So they had to have run it. I want to say like mid to late 90s, because I think it's the owner that owned this house two owners before I owned. So
I have all sorts of weird problems with my house. So
so poor Christos, you've had to pretty much like not necessarily gut things, but you've had to replace quite a bit and redo a bunch after you bought.
Yes. And these were things that the inspection didn't pick up either, because these are like things into the wall or things that you don't see when you run the inspection. Until you spend enough time in the house that you start poking around and you're like, oh, okay. So we had to change the furnace. That was a big one. Plus, put a heat pump. And so that was a big major expense. That was like a major rush to get done because it was getting super cold and it was in October.
Yeah.
So I went through a regular maintenance thing, and then the guys came in, and once I started taking things apart to see stuff, like, nope, this is a broken coil, so you're not allowed to use that anymore because you'll die. I was like, okay. Then we had to replace the
surprise.
And it's always at the winter time, right? It was like February in Michigan the time that it went out on my house.
It was October, and it was 1 week that the temperature went down to 30 degrees for Freedom units, and like -1 or 2 for European units. And it was insane. Like we had to rush to get it done, and I was panicking because it's a lot of money. And then we had to replace the water heater because even though it was a new one, the exhaust was going through the main chimney and it didn't really drop.
That's
backdrafting. Because it was an old system and they didn't care to replace it. So I was like, oh God, I have to replace that one as well. That's another thing. And then now we're trying to remodel certain things, like the garage doesn't have walls inside, so we're trying to do that, and everything requires a permit.
It's just like Illinois. It's I've got friends who live out there, and I actually have a friend that moved out of Boston, the Boston area, and moved to New Hampshire because he's like, well, there's no sales tax. You don't need as many permits to do things, and I'm relatively close to Boston, and I said, okay, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah,
but
So here in Boston, you're not allowed to touch electrical or plumbing at all. Because for plumbing, they fear about water poisoning, like you can kill people around you, so you can't really mess around with stuff. And for electrical, you have a certified electrician to do certain work because otherwise insurance won't cover it. So I was optimistic that I would be able to do certain things myself, and then suddenly I find out that I have to pay somebody else to do it. It's like,
no.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, is some of it just the old infrastructure? Because I know it's an older town, older city, right? It's one of the first 13 colonies, right? I think it was formed a long time ago. So it's probably some old infrastructure that they have to sort of know how to nuance around and fix, and right?
Correct. Yeah, and then you have like a lot of people that will do their own DIY stuff in the house and then not do it properly or up to code. And then, when you try to repair something or fix something or upgrade something, you find they have to do a lot more work because the previous owner messed up.
Yeah.
Right.
Own a house, they said. I want to punch they. Who said to own a house? It's you get more headaches than you need. So
So being in a rural area that I'm in, I had a septic field that failed this
that's expensive.
This year, so I had to connect to the county sewer, and that was a nice amount of money out of the pocket real quick.
But you do have one. We don't have a city septic, so because it's too expensive to run it here, and nobody wants to vote. I think you have at least an 80% consensus. Nobody wants to do that, so everybody has septic. And then the Lynchfield, if that ever goes bad, it's like $35,000 to $40,000 worth of repairs. I'm like, oh my God.
Because you have to create a new field, right? Well, in our township, because our neighborhood does have sewer. Once your septic fails, you have to connect to the sewer. You can't.
That's how they get you, Dwayne. That's how they get
Yes,
you.
That's how
exactly.
they got me. Now we have this
The
big
big sewer,
round
the
thing
big
in my
sewer.
yard that my wife can't stand because it's just this big round thing popping up from the ground.
Yeah, and you
Big
can't really like
serpent
hide
and
it. You know, you can't be like, no, don't look behind those
Well,
curtains because
they
it just looks.
do have kind of like the well covers. They do have big rocks that you can put over them. So
Oh, okay. Well, that's not. I guess that's not that bad.
and we've kind of got it towards the corner of our deck in our house, but it's a little bit further out than she really wanted. But I was like, if the backhoe got any closer to our house while it was digging, it would have hit our dining room window. So they really couldn't have done anything better because they have a bay window. So they couldn't really get it that cornered because they had a big hole from breaking down the septic tank. And so they only had so much. I was like, I watched them dig. They were as close to the house as they could have gotten without doing damage to our windows or siding. So it's where it needs to be.
Yeah. Christos, I don't think you know this.
We just need to make a corner garden a little bit further out to cut, and mulch around it and things like that.
So now you have to pay, certain thousands of dollars to do some landscaping outside to cover that.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Non-ending thing. And then once you do that, then you have to do the rest of the garden because you can't have one side that's too nice and then the other one not being nice.
Well, part of the price is the topsoil and seed. So so the sand pit that we have right now should go away. But
so I don't know if you know this, Christos. Amy's husband is my boss, and one of the things that they wound up doing recently was they redid their kitchen, and like it was like the hot potato of who's going to be here today, who. Because he's like, I can't even hear you. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, because I'm not hearing like the construction. He's like, I don't know what you're saying. I'll call you back. So he called me back later. And I'm like, what? I didn't hear anything. He's like, Teams suppressed it that much. I said,
Teams is amazing.
But so you went through your own headache, Amy, recently.
I was going to begging neighbors because that's when I was doing a bunch of recordings or streams. I'm like, of course, this week, when they're like demoing and sanding. And so, but Teams was, people complain about it, but the noise suppression was amazing. But you're trying to hear, you're like, what they say?
And I was
you
like,
don't hear the noise.
Because like he didn't explain what was going on. He's like, listen, I'm just gonna call you back in like 10-15 minutes. Are you around? And I just like wrote like yes, but you can't hear me say yes. So he called me later and then he told me what was going on. And I'm like, oh well, Teams did a really good job of suppressing it. So I don't know.
You did a job suppressing everything.
All of the fun. There's not as many gifts.
Christos is making an AWS comment about Teams and it's suppressing the ability to work and things like that. Is that what you're saying, Christos?
Yeah, exactly.
What you like Slack and
Zoom? What does AWS use for communication?
I don't know, Christos. I work in Zoom and Chime and all of those, and Chime has its own issues as well.
Is that what you use? You use Chime, Christos?
Yeah, we have Chime.
Okay.
I think it makes sense from copyright and privacy perspective. We don't want to use tools that other people are using, especially for our line of job. We're doing a lot of NDA, far ahead planning, strategy stuff that we want to talk about and prepare for keynotes. So, there are cases where we know things about the next event 9-10 months ahead of time. So you can't have these conversations anywhere. AWS is a very document-driven company. You probably heard that from many people. So
and that's why a couple divisions at Microsoft became more document-focused because AWS folks came over.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, like in the identity division, there was a shift. All of a sudden, it was a lot of documents, and people were. And so I didn't know life before. Yeah. So to me, it didn't really bother me. But there were people that were saying that was a big, huge shift, and it's in AWS kind of coming in and
correct.
So
documentation's good though. Come on.
It is. Nobody wants to do it too. That's the best part.
Right.
So I feel like, that's where like the co-pilot stuff is going to be interesting to see how that can be leveraged to write some of that for you. Yeah. Like write it for me. There's even like a paraphrasing tool that hits ChatGPT as well. Mm-hmm. And if you're like, this just doesn't sound great at all, like can ChatGPT paraphrase it for me?
Try again.
It's interesting.
Until you get it right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
playing
it's
around with it.
yeah. So a lot of documents, they have a very different workflow, but I really like the way that they do it. So every meeting starts with reading notes. Usually, when there is a document to read, so everybody starts with that. You usually know how long it takes to read 1, 2, 3, 6 pages. And then from there's comments that take place. We have an internal app called WorkDocs where we comment live on the document, but these comments don't go into the WorkDoc. They're outside of the WorkDoc. And then you use that to drive the conversation. So, let's say if I was presenting to you and we're discussing about X, then I would go through your comments in the document and they line, number, everything. So I can say on line 82, you left this comment. Can you explain a little bit more? Or I could present the case of why I wrote that in such a way. And then you go through multiple iterations of this, especially when we talk about, messaging and stuff.
Yeah.
Until everybody has their own input, and then you rewrite it in the process. And then eventually you arrive to something that 95% is happy with. And that's the final document. So very document-driven approach. Different tools.
So you're not using, what are you using as the document software? Is it just
Word.
Markdown?
We use Word.
You do use Word.
We use Word, but we use the offline version. So we use the full suite of Word.
Okay.
Again, nothing goes online, obviously for sensitivity reasons, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the gist of it. It's fun. I mean, it's a very different workflow to what I was used to be before, and a lot of attention to detail. So you don't really get that much when you do presentations where you have comments or notes on your PowerPoint, but you tend to uplift quite a bit and then do your own thing. These are very focused and very specific on how they do things, which is another way to work. And then some people like it, some people don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. I just was having this conversation of like customers are so unwilling to move to the cloud right now because there's something that is not there, right? Security, functionality, you name it, right? Or it's in its infancy. And I just was saying, I'm like, well, listen, you can totally stall out and keep your stuff on-prem, but your competitors are already in the cloud. We're talking to them. They're already innovating. They're moving forward. So you have to think about it iteratively. And I think that's where some of those working sessions are probably more iterative in nature, a lot more back and forth, a lot more meeting cadences that you have to set up and work through. I'm sure there are days where you're like, I am done being on the phone. Like, I am tired of talking to these people.
Yeah.
But those are like the longer days, right? And I'm sure it's probably one of those things where it like ebbs and flows, I'm sure.
Correct. As a team, we don't really do a lot of customer-facing work. We do work with proxies that do work with customers, right? So, we need to understand what the customers are doing, especially if we're bringing a customer on a keynote to talk about something. So we need to understand their use cases, their challenges, how they solve problems with AWS, why they chose AWS and stuff. But usually these come to us either through, again, a document. So, somebody will put a number of customers together and present it. But for this keynote, I'm part of this conversation. So I'm there with a customer. And it's nice because as keynote leads, we can ask the pointed questions that we want to also have them talk about on stage. And sometimes they're able to answer and like, that was a very technical, challenging problem and we're able to solve it. Some cases they might say, well, I don't really know that, so I need to bring somebody else in. But it's nice to be able to get some depth onto their challenges and how they solve it. So we're talking about massive companies that work across all industries.
Yeah. Very cool.
So before moving to AWS, did you have any AWS experience, or was it just more on the keynote and technical expertise?
So for this job to be able to deliver, everybody in my team has been an advocate. Funnily enough, at some point in their life, they were an advocate somewhere. Most of them in my team, like Martin and Nick, have been AWS advocates. So they had really hands-on experience working with AWS and talking to people through conferences, blogs, and what have you. I worked with AWS on the side because, being at Microsoft, our focus was obviously on Azure. But when I joined AWS, I did have the added challenge of ramping up very quickly with their full suite of services and capabilities. It's also very different in terms of messaging and how we talk about AWS. So some skills I was able to transfer, like the advocacy that I did before with Shannon being in the team. the ability to understand cloud and what customers are trying to solve was extremely useful. So there are transferable skills. It's just that you need to understand the lingo, and then you need to find the idiosyncrasies of the cloud or the services that you work with. But in terms of service software, PaaS, IaaS, FaaS, and ML and AI, everybody is more or less sitting at the same level. They just have different kind of depth and breadth. Obviously, AWS has the most depth and breadth. Doing some marketing here. I'm being paid for that. So let me
I was like,
this is the juice, right?
Put on your AWS cap.
It's the the breadth and depth. I mean, this is also an added challenge because you have to learn about more services and more capabilities and more features. But at the same time, I always use the same kind of piecemeal approach that I used before. I would focus on a specific subset. You can't learn everything in one go. So when I was working at Reinforce, I had the opportunity to work on the keynote for that, but also learn about and understand how the security model works inside and outside of AWS. What's the culture? What's the shared responsibility model? What's their approach to helping customers achieve their security? What do they do behind the scenes? That was really mind-blowing. I don't know if you saw the Reinforce keynote, but we did have a section about how is AWS protecting the cloud. Not just the cloud, but also the internet. Like the ability to understand how the internet traffic is happening because of the size of AWS, the sheer size and the presence of AWS, the variety of customers. Like a bank may be attacked. Now the attacker doesn't know that this bank is running on AWS, but we know that there's an attack happening against that customer. So we're able to help them both defend these and then also understand what are the motivations, what are the practices, how are they attacking? And then we take that information and feed it straight back into our services. So we proactively protect customers as we see new telemetry coming through. It's like super fascinating stuff that you wouldn't even understand, even if working on AWS as consuming services is very different to understanding the engineering effort that goes behind every single service, whether it's security, identity, EC2, like the innovation that we're seeing around EC2 and chips and what have you is just mind blowing. And that's what allows our customers to be super dialed in on cost and efficiency.
Right.
Marketing is over.
I was gonna say, so obviously, when we were working together, we were very focused on the identity messaging, getting that content out there, running these campaigns, getting people excited about how to adopt the services.
Yep.
Now that you're more focused on specific areas, do you like to be more broad? Do you kind of miss being narrowly focused? Like what's your where's Christos at these days? Does Christos like having that broad?
How do I get happy these days?
Yeah. Because I mean, you think about it, Christos was definitely always tinkering, always building, always coming up with new ways of presenting the ideas, and it was always fun to work with him because I always think I'm like a developer light. I play one on TV, and it was funny because both of us did a build learn live session. And I remember Christos was like, "You're driving." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, well, one thing, I'm over in Europe, so I don't know what my internet connection is going to be like. I'm like, okay.
Yes.
So, but Christos really broke things down so that I felt like I knew what I was doing. And but that was very heavy on the identity side of things, right? And so now that you're more broadly focused, I'm sure there's probably pros and cons to both.
Correct. I mean, being able to take a complex idea and then break it down into digestible, understandable components is a very transferable skill to what we do now, because we might not have to have the same breadth. Like every keynote will focus on certain aspects. Like Peter DeSantis will focus a lot on infrastructure and VMs and EC2, right? Werner, that I'm working on this year, is a lot more on the architecture, builder, hands-on building stuff. And with every keynote, we'd like to make announcements and launches and what have you. So I may need to understand the whole thing, like how all the pieces work together, but I don't need to be at 400 level on all the pieces. But when I work on a keynote, there are certain elements of services that we want to explain or talk about that I need to be at a 400 level. So we work with SMEs to help us understand that. Usually you don't have enough time to get in depth. So what you do is you have like a micro workshop session where you say, I need to understand what the service is doing, why it's doing. And then Werner likes to go really in depth, explaining things. So for him to be able to explain, I need to explain, be able to explain at the same level. Not because I might be on stage, but I might need to be able to support certain ideas. And executives usually have questions like, why did we do it this way? I can understand it, I can explain it, but I need to also, if somebody asks me, I need to be able to explain that. So you tend, as a keynote lead, have a lot of discovery conversations and discovery workshops where you speak to SMEs, you speak to project leads to understand, or service leads, to understand what is being launched, why are we launching it now. And sometimes we do, like we did S3 history stuff where we talked about how S3 initially was built and how it works and how it scales. I think 2 years ago we did IAM, right? So we wanted to show the scale of like 1 billion requests per second on IAM. It's just an insane number. Like, how do we scale to that number? And then, Werner went in depth to talk about the architecture that goes behind the scenes. So we tend to get a lot of in-depth analysis, but we don't do it across the 200 plus services that we have.
Got it. It seems like it's like a point in time, meaning like whatever the focus is for that keynote. So I think that would be kind of fun because your day-to-day seems like it's there's a lot of variety.
Correct. Yeah, you have to have a technical hat. Like, I don't think you can do this job if you don't understand the technicalities. You need to be able to, or you need to bring experience from customer work, like knowing the 1,000 cuts that customers have to go through using a service or building a solution that has to deal with something. What are the importances of security and CI/CD and all these things across the board? Sure. And then you bring that experience into helping build the keynotes. So there are a lot of things that we do. Speaking to marketing, working with SMEs, getting in-depth knowledge. Sometimes we spin up services just to go through the same experience and understand them. And then we also do some amazing visual work that, a lot of creative stuff that I haven't had a chance to do before. So that's probably one of the most exciting components of this role.
That's great. Yeah, that does sound exciting. Learning new stuff all the time, but bringing your expertise in and then getting creative too is always fun. That's awesome. And
it's like you always feel the stupidest person in the room. Everybody's more clever than you, which is a great environment to be because you're always learning stuff. But I tend to listen a lot more these days rather than talk because there's so many brilliant ideas that you want to listen to them rather than being the one talking.
Exactly.
So complete topic shift. And I know I just happened to look at the time. You are now an official Ironman. You just did your first Ironman.
My daughters say half Ironman. So
that's right. It was a half.
Not the man yet. Just Iron. Because I did the half Ironman.
It's a half marathon and only.
So if I do another half Ironman, then I can be a full Ironman. But for now, I'm just Iron, not Ironman. See. Have kids. They always provide.
They got to keep you grounded, right?
They keep you honest. They provide context, right?
How dare
you? Not really an Ironman dad.
Let me see you do that. Is the
it was only 70.3, Dad. How dare you?
Yeah, only 70.3 miles.
Yeah, right.
You didn't do 140.
But when we were working together, you were training, and I was like, "You're crazy." You were getting up at like 5 a.m. or like 4 a.m. You had almost like what felt like John Saville's schedule. I was like, how are you fitting it all in?
Like work, family, training. Oh my God, I would be exhausted.
Yeah. So that's probably gonna be one of the reasons I'll never do an Ironman. My coach will be like, never say never.
Because you can do one, just not well.
Well, the leap from doing a half Ironman to a full Ironman in terms of training and commitment is massive. So it almost feels like a full-time job when you do a full Ironman. It's not that you can't do it, but you probably, if I keep the same level of training, I will probably die halfway through.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Just above halfway through. Because right now I can prove I can do half.
Yeah,
half is good.
It was a bunch of riding, a bunch of running, and a bunch of swimming. And I was like, how are you fitting this all in? And you're like, it's very weird. And I think you even said that your trainer had access to all of your data, like your running stats and your swimming stats. And I'm like,
nutrition and
I feel like that's like where they're going to get mad at you. You're not working out enough. You're not doing enough.
You had a beer. What the hell?
I did have a beer. Yes, they just not told my coach. It was half a beer. Sorry, half a beer.
Half a beer.
Because you're half an Ironman. That's why.
Because everything is half these days.
Half a cup of coffee.
Training wise, I don't get up at 5 a.m. anymore, only because the dog gets me up at 5:30,
Oh, there you go.
5:40.
Go for your run session with the dog.
Yeah, he can't. Like he
He's
won't
got short little legs.
die after
Yeah.
the first mile.
Doggy
I don't know.
backpack.
He's a small dog. I don't know if we should have gotten a bigger dog to be able to run, but I will try to find a gap in my schedule, usually either halfway through the day or towards the end of the day, and then I will just go out and do whatever is prescribed. My coach does all the hard work of putting the scheduling for me, so I don't have to think about that. All I have to do is just open the app and do.
Yeah.
And then do it, because if I don't do it, then he texts me at the end of the day to say, "Where's my workout?" And that's probably the worst feeling ever. Like,
It's uploading.
You feel like you've let down a family member or a teacher. You're like, God damn it.
Yeah.
He's your Iron Man keynote writer, right?
Yeah.
Where are my notes?
And my biggest cheerleader, of course. I mean, he's super supportive.
That's cool.
No, you've got a different coach now too since you moved, correct?
No, I get the same
guy.
coach.
Oh, cool.
I mean, I was lucky because when I started working with him, he was literally like a couple of blocks away from where I live. It was nice in the beginning when you need to set up and need to understand what the challenges are. It's nice to have him there. But now we'll do everything remotely, and he's always there to help me out.
That's great.
Or to put me back in my place.
Light the fire under you.
like the other day I switched the workouts. Like I took the running and turned it into a swim because I wanted to go for a swim with the girls. So like, you'll be in the pool playing around, I'll be there training, and then we can play together. And my coach was like, "Why are you moving stuff around?
Right. Now you're impacting the rest of the
I don't want you to get injured."
Work-life balance, workout balance. Right?
Yeah. Sure.
And then a fun fact, we had April on, I think it was our last guest. And you and April have even worked out during your Ironman training, correct?
We haven't had a chance to work out together, but one of these days we'll probably overlap in a race, and we'll get a chance to work together.
That'd be fun.
I mean, if she's around, then I will grab my bike and go for a ride with her. Absolutely.
You guys at least worked out together, if I remember correctly, right?
Like a bike ride or something?
Wasn't it something like that?
No,
I thought you did.
I was in. She was in Redmond, and I was in Redmond, and we're doing the recordings. But she was just recovering from her last race, so we didn't do any training.
Because I know you were talking about maybe doing it. I guess I thought you did. Yes. So okay,
maybe one day.
That'd be fun. AWS versus GitHub now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Microsoft adjacent, right?
Microsoft adjacent. Right?
GitHub is everywhere, so you can't really. It's not.
That's cool.
It's true.
Everybody's
It'd be fun to see you guys. Right.
Indeed.
Well, kudos to you, because I could never do a late night workout like that. Usually after dinner
or an early morning. I'm not
early
functional. Yeah.
Something to keep you because we sit so many hours, and like I have a standing desk, but it's not the same. You need to put some exercise in there. Plus, it allows me to eat a little bit more liberally without having to worry about so much. About the calories, right? So I can have a nice meal without really feeling bad.
So I told my son started football practice this week, so he's been doing like the first four days of this week. He did 3-hour practices each night.
Oh,
yeah.
So he's like been eating dinner at like 9 o'clock because he doesn't want to eat before because he doesn't want to feel like he's gonna get sick while he's running around.
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, you've been talking all summer about how you want to get in shape. This is going to get you in shape real quick.
But then he's probably eating you out of house and home at night, right? Like probably having
he already does anyway.
Okay, there you go.
Now he's
it's just going to get worse though.
Not going to gain any weight. I mean, the kid, I had to take him for a physical before he got his equipment, and he in the last year he grew over 4 inches and only gained 3 pounds.
What?
So I'm like,
to be young.
Say like,
to be young again, have that metabolism.
I got a little bit of a gut and all this. I'm like, you didn't gain any weight and you gained height. And we all could tell, as he grew that he just started becoming chiseled, like, in his midsection, just all that baby fat started melting away as he sprouted up. And
see, youth is unfortunately wasted on the youth. I wish we could have some of those benefits of when I was, because like now I could really use them. I could use the faster metabolism. I could use more energy.
Yeah, I know. Indeed. We're chasing these kids around tired.
I'm like, can't they chase themselves around? That's what I said one day. I was like, can't Reese go chase himself around? And then I'm like, that doesn't even sound like it's a normal thing.
Tether him and
Yeah, so
Chase
we
something.
did make the joke, like, can we just tether him in the house? We can't go get into something. And then I was like, he's not a dog. We
Play
can't
hide
we
and seek
probably
in the
can't
house
do
and
that.
just never go and find him. Like let him
Oh, no.
hide for
Hide
30
and
minutes.
seek.
30 minutes of fishing.
Can't find you.
Yeah, yeah.
Shannon,
You hide
this
so
is
well.
that's where a dog comes in handy.
Yeah.
Oh
The dog is
yeah.
always there to do that and to entertain them.
There you go, boy and his
So
dog.
the hard part is we still have 3 cats and they're are all aging, and
Right.
I think one of them
Right.
is going to need like renal failure pills, and one might need subcutaneous shots. That's going to be a pain in the butt. So we'll wait until one passes, which we think is going to be. It's terrible to say this out loud, but we think it's going to be sooner than later. So then we'll get the dog and they can go have at it in the backyard.
Exactly.
There you go.
Go play with the dog.
Yeah.
The dog has endless energy. Go. Just like you.
Wear each other out.
Yeah.
This has been great.
Well, we are at the top of the hour. So Christos, thank you very much. As you love to have you back. Yeah, maybe the next time you do a half triathlon, we'll work on getting you and April on together.
Yeah, we should.
To talk about
Both of you.
do some more triathlon talking, and Shannon, Amy, and I can live through you by proxy, because I'm not planning on doing anything.
I did a
like
sprint
that
14 years
soon.
ago. That was
Oh,
about
there you go.
That counts.
Well, you and Nick,
That
did do like
just
a
say that
5K
counts.
or something, didn't you?
we did the
Like,
Chicago Marathon.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. You did
That's
something. I
crazy.
thought
That was
so,
my
but
last
yeah,
first and last
I'll
marathon.
live by proxy
only.
on all of that, just like the football and basketball career of my son. I'm living by proxy on all those. So, but yeah, thanks, Christos. We appreciate you making the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah,
and
thanks, Christos.
and making the day, as we had to adjust last week. But really appreciate getting to chat with you and getting to know you, and good luck on, and maybe I'll see you at an AWS event.
You will see me at Ring.
Well, I was gonna say, Dwayne, if you're at reInvent, I will
Let's see.
officially meet you. Hopefully, I'm going. Fingers crossed. If Nick is watching, Nick, you got to figure that out. And I'll introduce you to Christos. So,
or a summit.
I guess, or a summit.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't just it's the summit's
I
always
don't think
come
it
at
came
more
to
awkward
Chicago. I don't
times.
think it came to Chicago this
It
year.
didn't.
Right?
Yeah, and
the
so
Is there one going on right now?
Closest it got to us was Toronto, I think.
Yeah.
So
Well, next time I watch a keynote, I'll know Christos is behind the curtain.
we'll know that he wrote that he was part of the writing.
Could
of
be
it.
Don't,
awesome.
but don't look behind the curtains, because I don't
Right,
think
he's
Christos
there.
wants you to know he's there.
Sweating, sitting there.
Sweating. Like,
Yeah.
will the demo work?
Wizard. All right.
Thanks so much.
Well, thanks
Thank you very
everybody,
much for having
and thanks everybody listening in, and have a great rest of your day.
Cheers.
Bye.